Question number 2, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, does he have confidence in Treasury's economic projections?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, yes. However, I note that all projections are subject to uncertainty and in some cases considerable uncertainty. For instance, the Greens' projections about the very large vote that they would get in the 2014 election, which didn't eventuate.
Order. Supplementary question, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does he accept Treasury's projection in its briefing to the incoming minister released just last month that continued failure to reduce New Zealand's greenhouse gas emissions could result in a bill to the government of up to $52 billion?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, no, because that wasn't Treasury's projection.
Supplementary question, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Finance, does he understand that Treasury is advising him in this briefing to the incoming minister that the government will have to buy up to $52 billion in carbon credits on the international carbon market to cover the projected increase in New Zealand's greenhouse gas emissions if he continues down the current path?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, no, I don't accept that, and that actually isn't Treasury's. The projection the member is using is not Treasury's projection. All matters related to climate change are subject to considerable uncertainty. For instance, 3 years ago, the New Zealand government, the Treasury projected we'd be collecting around $1 billion in revenue from the emissions trading system, and I think this year we're going to collect pretty much nothing. So they were at least $1 billion out just over that 3-year period. The main reason being that the world carbon prices come way down because emissions have dropped much faster than they expected.
Supplementary question, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does he think Treasury got it wrong in the briefing to the incoming minister released just 1 month ago when they told him that if we continue down our current path, there is a huge cost to pay on the taxpayer if we don't reduce our greenhouse gas emissions?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, it's implicit in an emissions trading system that if the carbon price rises, then that puts a further impost on households and businesses. That's why we have an emissions trading system, precisely to send that kind of price signal. But exactly what the price is going to be is a subject of great uncertainty. As I said, no one really predicted as recently as 3 years ago that the current carbon price would be close to zero.
Supplementary question, Dr Russell Norman.
Does the minister not understand that in Treasury's briefing paper on page 8, where they're referring to the forecast price for carbon prices, they're not referring to the domestic price, they are referring to the international price, because New Zealand will be 315 million tonnes over its target, and it will have to buy carbon credits on the international market to cover 315 million tonnes, and if the price is $10 a tonne, it's over $3 billion.
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, and I don't agree with that because there's a whole lot of assumptions involved in it. I mean, if the Greens are worried about us getting in a hole, then I think the leader of the Greens should follow his members' advice from the campaign, the beach campaign in Timaru, where his members went down to the beach, and one of them, I quote, "I put a plastic bag in the hole so I didn't get sand in my ears." That might be very useful advice for him.
Order. Supplementary question, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Instead of making jokes about...
Order. The member has a right. Order. The member has a right to ask his question. Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Has he seen this graph from the Ministry for the Environment, his own government graph, which the blue line is going up because the blue line... Order. That's right. It's our greenhouse emissions, you idiots. It's our greenhouse emissions.
As I've just risen to my feet earlier and said, the member has a right to ask his question. He certainly has a right to use a visual aid, if that's helpful to him, in asking that question. Now, I want less interjection from my right-hand side, and I invite the member to repeat his question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Has the Minister seen this Ministry for the Environment graph, which shows New Zealand's projected emissions going up, the blue line? That's right, big increases in New Zealand's greenhouse gas emissions under this government's policies. The green line, of course, is our target to reduce our emissions, and the gap between the two will have to be covered by buying carbon credits on the international market, a cost which his own Treasury says will be up to $52 billion on the taxpayer.
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, yes, I have seen the graph, and I think the government's fully aware of the implications of the emissions trading system. However, we are not as certain as the member about the projections, as indicated with the way he's extrapolated the costs mentioned by Treasury. New Zealand has a pretty enviable track record in high levels of renewable energy, in investing in technology to reduce agricultural emissions, and we remain pretty optimistic that we'll continue with the relative success we've had in recent years on our contribution to reducing climate change.
Supplementary question, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does he think it is responsible economic management to expose the New Zealand government to a carbon bill of up to $52 billion for the period of 21 to 30, as Treasury are projecting? And does he believe it is responsible environmental management to increase New Zealand's net greenhouse gas emissions by 50% over the next decade?
Honourable Bill English can answer either of those two supplementaries.
Well, Mr Speaker, I just don't agree with the assertions that the member has made. Certainly as a responsible government, we wouldn't want to expose New Zealanders to such large-scale liabilities if we believed that was the case, and we don't.
Question number 3, Andrew Little.